Did you know that in our homes we have a powerful tool that can change the world? Today, I want to share with you why I believe that our forks are more powerful than we think. This is me. I had hair. I also was angry. I was really angry at injustice. When I was a teenager, I couldn't stand the way that we were treating the animals and our planet. And I started activism very early on. I was so intense that I even dropped out from high school to start leading the regional section of an international animal rights organization to fight for what I believed in. We were doing demonstrations, we were doing performance, we were giving talks, we were changing laws, we were appearing in the news, and I realized that most of the people agreed that we needed a change. I also was doing undercover investigators. I was going in hundreds of farms and slaughterhouses, and I can experience what was in there. And that was a tipping point in my life, because I realized that it wasn't just a dramatic situation for the animals and the planet, but also for the farmers and the workers that work there. And that at the end, it was the whole food system that was broken. So I took all that anger and transformed it into building a company that could improve the food system, because it's failing us. 800 million people are suffering from chronic hunger, while 1/3 of the total food production is wasted. On the other hand, 2 billion people suffer from obesity, and the food industry is responsible of 35% of global greenhouse gas emissions. We eat 3 times a day, but I feel that we are quite disconnected from the impact of our food. But today, we are going to change this. So, if I'd ask you, what creates more emissions, the whole transportation systems or animal agriculture, what would you say? Educated audience. So, animal agriculture creates more emissions than the whole transportation system. All the cars, all the planes, all the boats, etc., all combined. And this is because of the magnitude of it all, that we are not aware about it. Every year, we are farming 10 times more animals than humans living on planet Earth. So many animals that just 4% of mammals are living into the wild. Just 4%. Just cows alone are 1.5 billion. More than 2 times the whole population living in Europe. Cows drink 15 times more water than a human and need 20 times more food. So if we are getting all that food, we could be feeding 4 times the human population. Doesn't sound like a good use of resources, right? And taking more perspective into the magnitude, nowadays we are using 83% of the agricultural land to feed animals, while we are only taking 18% of the calories. So imagine that you go to your bank and you deposit 25 euros. And when you go to withdraw your money, you only get 1. You will think that you are being robbed, right? So that's what's happening every time that we are feeding cows. We are giving them 25 calories of food only to take at 1. And this is not the worst part of it. This whole magnitude, it's leading that animal agriculture is the major contributor to 4 catastrophes at a global scale. Like deforestation, 80% of the Amazonian rainforest is being deforested in order to plant crops that we send to Western countries to feed animals. We are deforesting as much that this is the first cause to biodiversity loss. Agriculture is putting at threat 86% of the species in risk of extinction. And we are farming so many animals that there is so amount of waste that it's the first cause of freshwater contamination. Here where I live, in Catalonia, 68% of groundwater is contaminated. And as we are putting so many animals in small spaces, 80% of global antibiotics go to animal farming, which is increasing our antibiotic resistance, which experts says that it puts us at risk of the next global health crisis. And all this, it's happening in a context where we are already consuming as if we had more than one planet. And scientists are warning us. We have just 1 decade to decrease drastically our emissions if we want to make sure that we are reaching a point of no return. But there are good news. We're starting to be more aware of this challenge, and more solutions and more information is coming to us. We can see vegan restaurants popping up in our neighborhoods. So if I ask you, what do you think that will happen in the next decade? Animal consumption products will increase or decrease? Hands up for decrease. Well, quite a few optimists there. I like you guys, you are on my team. Let's see what experts say. What is forecasted is that in the next decades, animal consumption will increase. And it will happen because 3 more billion humans will be born before 2050, and consumption habits are changing in big populated areas. It will be super easy to supply all this demand with legumes, cereals, and vegetables, but the reality is that we love meat. And at the end, the most important moments of our life are happening around food. The barbecues with our friends, eating with our families, and at the center of the plate, there is meat. So we have a big challenge here. How we keep enjoying our traditions while changing the food system. And here we require innovation, and this is a challenge that other industries had before. Would you imagine coming here by a horse, parking it outside and being careful not to step up in a horse shit before you come in? Would you imagine lighting up this room using whale oil? We used to do that before we discovered kerosene. Would you imagine flirting, sending messages with a pigeon? We all will be single here. So it's interesting that when you look at our big industries, all of them started with animals. And then we used technology to make sure that we were scaling access to consumption. And nowadays, we are living a revolution where we are going towards sustainable access of consumption. But when we look at the way that we are getting proteins, what we've done is scaling up the problem, but not getting to a better solution. And in the same way that in energy, we are living a transition towards better sources, the same is that we need around proteins, a protein transition. So at the end, we have 2 ways. Keep doing what we are doing, using a high amount of resources to feed animals, get a lot of problems, and get just a little bit, a few of the food that we love, or go directly to the primary source, skip the middleman, and get directly high amount of the food that we love. Because at the end, meat is just amino acids, lipids, vitamins, minerals, and water. and we can go directly to nature to get it. And this is the only way that we can make sure that the whole world can keep eating meat. But at the same time, the World Health Organization is telling us we have to reduce for our health the high amount of meat consumption that we have now. But with this path, we can eat the food that we love even more frequently. And that's what you realize, that this protein transition is like a Swiss Army knife of change. Acting locally with our fork, we can act on global challenge of health, the environment, food justice, and protect the animals in the same time. Let me bring some hope. You remember the graph about how meat consumption was going up? I really believe that with this innovation, in 2040, 60% of our meat won't be coming from animals, and we have the power to accelerate that. So I start sharing that the fork was more powerful than we think. Let me share an example with you. If the 100 of us tonight, instead of choosing a beef burger, we will be choosing a plant-based one, we will be saving the same amount of emissions that 7 planes going from London to Paris. 7 planes. And the same amount of water that 8 years of daily showers. 8 years of daily showers. So if this is the impact that 100 of us can have with one meal, imagine if the whole world were changing their meals. 3 times a day, we have the power to create a better world. The power is in your hands. Join the food revolution and vote with your fork. Thank you very much.